Ever read a book that feels like, it's predicting the future, even though it was written decades ago?
Yeah.
That's Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale for you. First published back in 1985, this dystopian masterpiece, it continues to haunt readers, right? And it sparks so much controversy, especially now in 2024.
It's true.
Today, we are diving deep into why The Handmaid's Tale remains so relevant decades after it was published. So we've got this chilling excerpt from a Kirkus review, and it captures this unsettling feeling Atwood creates,
Yes.
And to guide us through the story, we'll also be referencing the book's Wikipedia page.
Sounds good.
So whether you're revisiting Gilead or this is your first encounter with this chilling future, get ready for a thought-provoking journey. Okay, so picture this. It's America, but not as we know it. It's been replaced by Gilead, a totalitarian regime that rules with an iron fist and with a very, very particular interpretation of the Old Testament.
What's striking about Gilead is how Atwood takes away women's rights. Systematically. They can't own property, they can't hold jobs, and the most chilling part, they're stripped of their very identity.
It's like your entire existence revolves around, their ability to have children.
Right.
And then we meet Offred. She's our protagonist, a handmaid, forced into sexual servitude for the ruling elite, the commanders.
And Atwood, she doesn't shy away from the brutality of this new reality. The handmaid's sole purpose is to bear children for commanders who are unable to conceive naturally. So they're turning them into vessels for this twisted societal goal.
Yeah, and reading Offred's firsthand account is terrifying. That Kirkus review called it a chillingly specific, imaginable nightmare. This world that feels unnervingly plausible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Though the review also mentioned the character development being teeny.
What I think is so fascinating is that this teeny aspect that you mentioned actually enhances the story's impact, Because Offred's narration is so stripped down, it reflects how Gilead just methodically strips individuals, especially women, of their identities. We're experiencing the world through her eyes, a world where self-expression and individual thought are, systematically erased.
Atwood masterfully blends historical fact with fiction to create this chillingly plausible world.
Exactly. And the Wikipedia entry categorizes The Handmaid's Tale as speculative fiction. It's not about futuristic technology like we see in science fiction. It's about taking current societal trends and pushing them to their terrifying extremes.
It's scarily relatable. Environmental disasters impacting fertility, religious extremism used to control populations, constant surveillance. These are anxieties we grapple with today in 2024.
Precisely. It's as if Atwood is holding up a mirror to society, forcing us to confront these uncomfortable truths and ask ourselves, could this happen here? Could it happen now?
It's a chilling thought, but it's also a powerful reminder of why we need to be vigilant in defending our freedoms and challenging injustice wherever we see it. Let's unpack some of these themes further, shall we? The Wikipedia page highlights some big ones. Control over women's bodies. Environmental catastrophe is this backdrop to Gilead's rise, religious extremism fueling their laws, and totalitarianism, woven into everyday life.
And the scary part is, like you're saying, we are witnessing echoes of these themes in our world today. The ongoing debates about reproductive rights, the growing anxieties surrounding climate change, the rise of authoritarian regimes globally. It's like Atwood tapped into something terrifyingly real.
Okay, let's talk about those little details that make Gilead feel so disturbingly real, like the color-coded clothing, wives in blue, handmaids in red, Marthas in green. It's like a walking social hierarchy.
What's so unsettling about this color coding is how it strips away individual identity, reducing women to visual symbols of their assigned roles. This meticulously designed system isn't just about control, it's about, erasing individuality.
And then there are the names, or rather the lack of them. Offred, Offglen, of Warren. It's chilling how they're defined by their commanders, stripped of their given names.
Imagine being reduced to, a possessive of someone.
Yeah.
Your name, your identity, erased and replaced with a label that signifies ownership and function. It's a psychological weapon used to crush any sense of self-worth.
And the ceremony. The way Offred describes it. So clinical, so devoid of emotion. It just highlights how easily oppression can become normalized, even routine.
That's the insidious nature of Gilead. It doesn't just impose its ideology, it conditions people to accept it as the norm. The ceremony, this ritualized rape under the guise of religious piety becomes just another event in Offred's, tightly controlled existence.
It's a chilling reminder of how easily we can become desensitized to brutality when it's presented as normal or necessary.
Exactly. And that desensitization, that creeping acceptance of the unacceptable, that is one of the most dangerous aspects of any totalitarian regime.
The book is full of morally gray characters, which makes it even more unsettling, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Take Nick, for example, the commander's chauffeur. He starts a relationship with Offred, but his true allegiance remains ambiguous. It reflects this atmosphere of suspicion and paranoia that just permeates totalitarian states.
We're constantly left guessing, never sure who to trust, which just adds to the feeling of unease. Okay, so we've established that The Handmaid's Tale is brilliantly written, but it consistently appears on high school challenged book lists. Why do you think this book, in particular, causes such a stir?
It seems those books that force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves often face the most resistance. And The Handmaid's Tale, I mean, it isn't just a dystopian fantasy, it's a warning. And for some, that warning hits too close to home.
It's like that old saying, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And The Handmaid's Tale is rooted in history. It's not just, Atwood's imagination running wild.
You're right. The Wikipedia entry mentions how Atwood was deeply affected by the political climate of, the 1980s, particularly the discussions around women's rights and the rise of religious extremism. She took those anxieties and wove them into this, terrifying yet plausible future.
It's like she took those what-if scenarios everyone was tossing around and crafted a chilling response, like, this is what could happen if we're not careful.
And she didn't stop there. She delved into historical examples of oppression and control, weaving them into, the fabric of Gilead, the Salem witch trials, the forced sterilization programs of the 20th century, the totalitarian regimes that sought to control, every aspect of people's lives. They all serve as, cautionary tales within the narrative.
It makes you wonder, are we, as a society, drawn to these stories because, deep down, we recognize these patterns, these warning signs? But here's something interesting. Even in the bleak and oppressive world of Gilead, there are glimmers of hope, right?
Absolutely. Even in the face of such overwhelming control, Atwood shows us the resilience of the human spirit. There are characters like Ofglin, Offred's shopping partner. She's secretly part of Mayday, the resistance group working to undermine Gilead from within.
And Offred herself. She finds ways to rebel, even if it's just holding on to her memories, her inner thoughts, or her forbidden relationship with Nick.
Exactly. It highlights that even in the darkest of times, the human desire for freedom, for connection, for individuality, it can't be entirely extinguished.
It's a powerful message. But these acts of defiance come at a cost. Gilead is brutal in its punishments, especially for those who dare to, challenge the order. Remember what happened to the original Ofglin when her involvement in the resistance was discovered?
A chilling reminder of the risks associated with challenging, those in power. Facing torture and certain death, she chose to take her own life. A final act of defiance. It underscores the courage it takes to resist, even when the odds seem insurmountable.
So here we are in 2024, still grappling with many of the same issues Atwood explored decades ago. If The Handmaid's Tale is a warning, what are we supposed to take away from it?
I think the most crucial message is the danger of complacency. We can't afford to be, passive observers. We have to be vigilant, engaged, and willing to speak out against injustice to protect our freedoms and those of others.
Because the road to Gilead, as Atwood so brilliantly illustrates, isn't paved with sudden dramatic upheavals, but with small compromises, subtle erosions of rights, and the justification of oppressive acts in the name of some, greater good.
Precisely. It's about recognizing those warning signs, those seemingly insignificant shifts in societal norms, those cracks in the foundation of our freedoms that can easily widen if left unaddressed.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own lives, to assume that things will always be this way. But Atwood shows us how quickly that can change.
And that's why The Handmaid's Tale continues to resonate so strongly today. It's not a comfortable read, but it's a necessary one. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our world and the direction we're heading in.
We can't afford to dismiss it as just a story. It's a call to action, a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the future.
Absolutely. It's about asking ourselves, what are we willing to tolerate? What lines are we willing to cross? Because once those lines are crossed, it can be very difficult to turn back.
It's like that old saying, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing.
Exactly. We can't just assume that someone else will fight the good fight. It's a responsibility that falls on each of us.
And that responsibility starts with being informed, being aware of the issues, and being willing to engage in those uncomfortable conversations.
And, like, most importantly, it's about taking action, however small, to create a world that reflects our values, a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect.
Okay, so we've talked about the bigger picture, the themes that make The Handmaid's Tale so relevant today. But what about those smaller details, those insidious rules and customs that really highlight how much control Gilead has over people's lives? Those little things that, like, make your skin crawl.
You mean like the color-coded clothing system we touched on earlier?
Exactly. It's so simple, yet so effective. Wives in blue, handmaids in red, Marthas in green. Even the econo-wives, the wives of lower-ranking men, wear a combination of blue, red, and green stripes to reflect their, like, multiple roles.
It's a visual representation of Gilead's rigid social hierarchy. One glance and, a woman's status or sign role. It's dehumanizing, reducing individuals to, like, mere symbols of their function within the regime.
And don't even get me started on the names, or rather, the lack of them. Offred, Ofclin, of Warren. It's chilling how these women are stripped of their individual identities, forced to take on the name of their commander as if they were, like, possessions.
It's a powerful tool of psychological control. By stripping them of their names, their history, their sense of self, Gilead asserts complete ownership. These women aren't individuals with hopes, dreams, aspirations. They are vessels, walking wombs, defined solely by their, like, reproductive capabilities.
And to further tighten their grip on thought and expression, Gilead imposes, like, strict rules about language and communication, right?
Absolutely. Remember that scene where Offred and Ofclin are walking back from the market and exchange a few forbidden words in hushed tones? It highlights the constant fear and paranoia that permeates Gilead. Even the most casual conversation can be dangerous.
It's chilling how easily, like, seemingly innocuous phrases like "blessed be the fruit" or "under his eye" become weaponized. Tools for enforcing conformity and suppressing dissent.
It's a subtle form of brainwashing, really. By controlling language, Gilead controls thought and, ultimately, behavior.
And the scary part is that these methods of control aren't unique to Gilead. We've seen them throughout history and even in our own time, in various forms.
Exactly. That's why The Handmaid's Tale is so effective as a cautionary tale. It's not just about a dystopian future. It's about the potential for oppression that exists in any society where power is concentrated and individual rights are eroded.
It's a reminder that the path to Gilead isn't paved with dramatic overnight revolutions, but with those small, incremental steps, subtle shifts in norms and values that can easily go unnoticed until it's too late.
It's about recognizing those early warning signs, being vigilant in defending our freedoms, and never taking our rights for granted.
Because the price of liberty is eternal vigilance.
Exactly. The Handmaid's Tale reminds us that the fight for freedom is never truly over. It's an ongoing struggle, a constant push and pull between those who seek to control and those who seek to liberate.
And that fight isn't just about grand gestures or heroic acts. It's also about the everyday choices we make, the conversations we have, the ways we engage with the world around us.
It's about recognizing our own agency, our own power to shape the future we want to live in.
And it's about remembering that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure, resistance can flourish, and the human spirit can find a way to persevere.
It's about writing our own stories, our own testaments, rather than allowing someone else to dictate them for us.
It's a powerful message, and it's one that resonates deeply with readers today, almost 4 decades after The Handmaid's Tale was first published.
And that's a testament to Atwood's brilliance as a writer. She's not just telling a story. She's sparking a conversation, a critical examination of our own societies and the choices we make, both individually and collectively.
And that's ultimately what makes The Handmaid's Tale so enduring, so relevant, and so important. It's a book that challenges us, provokes us, and reminds us that the future is not set in stone. It's a work in progress, and we all have a role to play in shaping its direction.
And that's a message worth repeating, worth reflecting on, and worth acting upon.
It's almost like Atwood is holding up this stark, distorted mirror to our own world, forcing us to confront those uncomfortable possibilities.
Exactly. And that's what makes A Handmaid's Tale such a powerful and enduring work. It's not just entertainment. It's a challenge, a call to action. It begs the question, what will we do with this warning?
So much of the book focuses on, like, the insidious, gradual erosion of rights and freedoms. It's not this sudden coup, but this slow creep into authoritarianism.
And that's what makes it so terrifyingly relatable. We see how easily people can become complicit, how fear and uncertainty can be manipulated, and how those in power can, exploit those vulnerabilities to achieve their own agendas.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed,
Yeah.
even helpless, when faced with the enormity of these issues, both within the novel and in our own world. So where do we even begin? What can we as individuals actually do to make a difference?
Well, first, we have to acknowledge the power of awareness. We can't fight against something if we're not even aware it's happening. Or if we choose to look away from those uncomfortable truths, right? We need to educate ourselves about the signs of oppression, the subtle ways in which rights can be eroded, and the rhetoric used to justify, discrimination and control.
It's like that saying, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. But vigilance alone isn't enough, right? What about action? What can we actually do to combat these forces?
There's a quote often attributed to Edmund Burke: "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." It highlights the danger of apathy, of assuming that someone else will take care of the problem.
It's so easy to feel like our individual actions don't matter, that we're just one voice in a sea of millions. But that's exactly the kind of thinking that allows these dangerous ideologies to take root and spread.
Exactly. We have to be willing to speak up, to challenge injustice wherever we see it, even if it's uncomfortable or unpopular. We need to support those who are most vulnerable, advocate for policies that promote equality and justice, and hold those in power accountable for their actions.
It's not always about grand gestures or being on the front lines of every protest. It's about those everyday actions, those small acts of resistance that, when multiplied across a society, can create a powerful force for change.
You're absolutely right. It can be as simple as, having those difficult conversations with family and friends who might hold biased views, challenging prejudice and discrimination when we encounter it, being mindful of our own language and biases, supporting organizations that are fighting for social justice, and using our votes and voices to advocate for a more just and equitable world.
And let's not underestimate the power of education. It's about equipping future generations with the critical thinking skills they need to recognize and challenge these harmful ideologies.
Absolutely. It's about teaching empathy, fostering open-mindedness, and encouraging young people to be engaged and informed citizens who are willing to stand up for what they believe in.
So as we conclude this deep dive into The Handmaid's Tale, we're left with this powerful message, right? A reminder that the future is not predetermined. It's not something that simply happens to us.
It's a tapestry woven from the choices we make every single day.
Will we choose apathy or action? Silence or courage? Complacency or resistance?
The Handmaid's Tale doesn't offer easy answers, but it does provide a powerful framework for asking those difficult questions, for examining our own beliefs and biases, and for recognizing the role we each play in shaping the world we want to live in.
It's a call to action. A reminder that the fight for freedom, equality, and justice is an ongoing struggle, one that requires our constant attention and participation. We hope this deep dive has inspired you to think critically about the world around you and to consider what you can do in your own way to make a difference. Because even small acts of courage and compassion can have a ripple effect, creating waves of change that shape the course of history.
Beautifully said. And remember, the future is unwritten. Let's write it together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into The Handmaid's Tale. We'll be back next week with another thought-provoking topic. Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep.